Hello, English 10. Since I was out today, I'm going to have you do some of the work that we would have done in class on your own. The first half of this in this first video is about the reflective journals that we would be doing the first part of class. So this first one is really just our usual beginning of class free write. So I would say spend at least 5 to 7 minutes, more if you feel like it. The journal today is there seem to be a lot of things going on today that are overwhelming, and then I mentioned a few things here: fires, hurricanes, DACA repeal, threats of war, even midterms might be causing you to be overwhelmed at this particular point. So I want you to just write about what's on your mind, what are the things that you're currently struggling with. So you could pause this and take a few minutes to write the journal. I'm going to move on now to our next bit of reflective writing. So for this next exercise, you can keep out your journal. You could use a new page in your journal, or if you want to take out a separate piece of paper for the list part of this exercise, we'll be making two different lists. You could just divide that paper down the middle and put one list on each side, which might be helpful since we're going to compare them at some point. I want you to be as honest as possible on your lists. I don't need to see your list. What I will be looking for is the free write that you're doing in your journal at the end of this exercise. So if you have things on your list that you'd rather not share with me, you can just tear that out of your journal, or if you put it on a separate piece of paper, you don't need to necessarily show me that part, just the free write at the end is what I'll be looking for. So the first list I want you to make is a list of how you want to or thought you would be spending your time in college. So when you got accepted to college and you had some idea that you would be coming to Sac State, what did you expect? Maybe you expected to study, maybe you were going to get involved in the community in some way, maybe hanging out with friends or playing sports, or maybe you expected to do some work. Whatever your expectations were for how you would be spending your time in college, I want you to make a list of the things that you thought you would be spending your time on. We'll deal with reality in a minute, so just make a list of what you expected, and I'll give you a few minutes for that. If you need to pause the video so that you can finish your list, please do so. I'm going to move on to explain the second list, but you should completely make your first list before moving on. So take a few more minutes if you need to. List 2 is asking for you to now make a list of how you actually spend your time, or how you actually have spent your time this past week or two. So think about the activities you've actually done, the things you've actually spent time on. Maybe you've played video games, maybe you've been on your phone, maybe you've studied some, maybe you've worked, whatever it is you've actually done over the last week or two. And if you're able to, maybe think about how many hours you spend on each of those things on your list. Quantify the reality of how you've spent your time the last week or two, and I'll give you a few minutes to work on that. You'll probably need a few more minutes to complete this list. So if you'd like to pause the video and finish your list, and I will go ahead and move on to the next part of this activity. So the last thing I want you to do is to compare your two lists. Where do they match up? Where do they differ? And then free write about what you notice. As you, or after your free writing, think about what's one thing that you could do to bring the reality of your expectations or the reality of what's happening closer to meeting your expectations for college life. So what's one thing you could change or do to bring the reality closer to what you had expected? And I'll have you free write about that in your journal. And this is the free write that I'd like to see. If you don't want me to see your list, again, you can dispose of it. And so when you're done with that, you can move on to the second video, which is going to focus on Toni Morrison and the novel that we'll be reading in class, and give you some hints for reading the short story that's assigned for today. Thank you.